So here are the mittens that we're going to make today. There's a picot hem, like we did on the hat. We gather the thumb like we did on the hat. We short row like we did on the heel of the sock. And then we sew up the sides with a mattress stitch and a Kitchener stitch here. And you have a left and right. In the video I show you how to do the left one. So we're going to just reverse for the other mitten. So anything you did on the left, you do on the right and vice versa. So for this project, I used the Loops and Threads Snuggly Wuggly, which is from Michaels. It's a number 3 yarn, but you could probably use any number 3 yarn and get pretty much similar results. Now we're going to start on the mitten, and I've got my waste yarn threaded. And I'm going to go from, let's say 20 to 20. I'm going to cast on 40 stitches. And I'm going to push every other back. So I've got every other one threaded. And then with the waste yarn, I'm going to cast on using the comb. I'm going to go try to get it in the center. Then hang a weight. I'm going to put a clip on the end of the waste yarn, and I'm at tension 4. My carriage is on NN on both sides, and then I'm going to pull the opposite needles out to working position. And I'm going to make sure to get number 20 on this side because it got pushed back when I did the every other needle, but I want 40 stitches. So, and now I've got my cast on. So now I'm going to do a bunch of rows of waste yarn. I generally do about 10 or 12. The purpose of the waste yarn is just to establish the other stitches, the regular stitches. So now I'm going to cut my waste yarn. So now I'm going to thread my main yarn, which is the pink, into my carriage, into my mass, and then to the carriage. And now I am still, I haven't changed my carriage settings. I'm going to set my row counter to 0, which means I go, there's little arrows under here that show you which direction. So you go start here, 0, 0, and then go this way on the ones. Now I'm going to leave a tail so I can sew up the side seam, and then I'm going to knit. And at this point, I want to put a few more weights on my knitting, on the edges especially. Now this hem is going to be similar, or pretty much the same as the picot hem that we did on the hat, just maybe a little deeper. So I'm at row 20, and now I'm going to transfer every other stitch to make the picot hem. So I start at the first one, go over 1, make sure that stays out of work. And this is just like we did on the hat video with the hem. to do this, I hold my transfer tool parallel to the needle. The needle's there, and I'm pulling, going parallel, putting my finger underneath, pulling all the way out, pushing all the way back in, lifting up, and transferring over. So every other stitch until you get to the last stitch. Now, I had said before to make sure that went back, but that was not correct. I want all these in work because I'm making a picot hem. And I transferred my first stitch, but I still want 40 stitches. So I'm bringing that first needle back into work. So all of the needles are in work now. And now I'm going to knit 20 more rows to get to row count 40. $39, $40. Now, just like we did in the hat video, where we made the hat, which is also on my channel, you will take all your weights off, and what we're going to do is be hanging this hem up here to make the picot hem. And I'm taking everything off, all my clamps and weights and clips and all that. So then I'm taking my single transfer tool, and I am hanging my stitches. First stitch I'm going to hang is this one here. I'm going to hang it on the second needle. And then I hang each stitch on each one. And you can hang 3 at a time. You may have gotten to a point where you feel comfortable doing that. If not, do them 1 at a time. This is working pretty well for me. Now, this is where our picot is, and that's what I often do is take this yarn, this thread, and hang it over that first needle. So now, because we have a lot going on the stitches, I like to pull them out for the next pass. And I'm at T4, I'm going to go up to T5 just for this particular row. Because I'm knitting 2 rows together, it'll give me a little more, ease. And then I'm going to reset my row counter. So now we're getting into the hand, and I'm going to knit 18 rows for the hand, which is going to be this part of my mitten. The cuff, and then the hand, then we're going to do the thumb, and we'll do the rest. So 18. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I forgot to go down in tension. 6, 7, 8. You should have gone down to tension 4 for that, but for this I'm not going to start over. Sandy, you want to put your weights? 1, 2, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18. Now we're starting on the thumb, and you've just did the hand part, which is here. Now we're going to be doing the thumb. So I'm going to cast on 8 stitches on the right. 2, 4, 6, 8. And I'm going to do an E-wrap, and that goes just like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're only going to be working on the stitches here. And these, I mean, effectively, these can all be in upper working position or all in working position, but just to make it easier to understand, we're working on these needles here. These are in hold. We're going to put our carriage on hold, which is put both levers to H, so you should be on NH on both sides. And then we're going to work 16 rows for the thumb. It's best to always reset your carriage rather than to try to count, because if you get distracted, it's easy to lose your place. So now we're working 16 only on the thumb stitches. So 1, and we're not wrapping because we want these to be separate. 2, and you have to be careful of the ones on the end because they're going to be difficult to knit off just because they were just E-wrapped. And we can't pull them to hold because the carriage is in hold. So you just have to make sure that they knit off. And if you have to knit them off manually, as I did on that last one, that's what you have to do. So I did 1 row. Now that we've got 16 rows knitted for the thumb portion, as you can see, it's separate here. So we're going to transfer every other needle. This is the same thing we did for the picot hem, and it's also very similar to how we gathered the top of the hat. So we're transferring every stitch to decrease the number of stitches in half. It's separate here. So we're going to transfer every other needle. This is the same thing we did for the picot hem, and it's also very similar to how we gathered the top of the hat. So we're transferring every stitch to decrease the number of stitches in half. So we've transferred every other stitch, and now we're going to make sure that those stitches that we transferred are out of work because we don't want them to knit this time. And then we're going to knit 1 row. And then we're going to cut our yarn, leaving a tail of it about 12 inches. And then we will knit off. We're going to thread our double-eyed transfer tool. And we're going to sew all of these onto the thread. This is the same as how we gathered the hat hem, the top of the hat, because what we're going to do is gather the tip of the thumb. So now here's our piece that's going to be the thumb. And this will be the top. These will gather, and then our thumb will be here. So when we're doing the thumb, what we do is turn it, we're facing this way, we turn it down so that you're looking at the knit side. Then it folds this way. And what we want to hang on the needles, we're hanging these 8 stitches that we cast on back onto the hooks. So we get in here, the first set is these 2 loops here. They're hard to tell which ones, but after you've done it, after you see it, so it's both loops of the stitch. And if you do it correctly, it makes a seamless transition on the thumb. Six. So set your carriage back to N and do 31 rows. And here I've done 31 rows, and now I'm going to put all the needles to the left of 0 in hold. And now I'm going to short row the top of the mitten the way we did the sock, exactly like that. And so I have 20 stitches, so if you divide, the rule for short rowing is generally like you would do a heel, and it works for a mitten as well. Let's do down to 6 on each side and then 7 in the middle. Now we're going to short row the top of the mitten the way we did the sock, and I'm going to set the carriage to hold, and I'm going to bring out my first needle to hold, and then I'm going to wrap that. This is exactly the way you did the sock, the slipper sock we did in the last video. And remember, you're going to need weight under where it's actually knitting, which is in the middle. Each time I'm pulling out the furthest needle from the carriage, knitting across, then wrapping, making sure to keep weight under it. Now I've got 6 in hold over here. I've got 8 in the middle, so I need 1 more on this side. Now that I've got them pulled out, I'm going to start decreasing. So I'm pushing the furthest back to hold, back to upper work, wrapping. Push back, knit, wrap, push back, knit, wrap, knit. I don't want to wrap here because I want these to be 2 separate pieces. Then knit 1 more, and then here's the top of your mitten. Is with waste yarn, I want to knit these off onto waste yarn, and then I want to knit those off onto waste yarn. So I'm going to keep these in hold because I don't want them to knit. So what I'm doing is with waste yarn. Now I want the ones that I just knit in hold, and then the ones I didn't knit in work. I cut my waste yarn. So I've gathered the top, and then I'm just mattress stitching down the side of the thumb. So to Kitchener stitch, what I want to do is graft this top to this, the pink stitches together. And my aim is to have a perfect seam. It doesn't always come out perfect, but we're going to try to get it as close as we can. So we start out, here we are, and I like to do it wrong side to wrong side, because Kitchener stitch is easy when working with waste yarn if you just think of it in this way. You always go in the stitch you came out of, and you can tell the stitch you came out of because if you tug on it, you can see where it is. It's right there. And then, so that stitch, and then this waste yarn stitch, the blue one, is the one you want to recreate. So because it's going like this, I want to go like that. So I want to go in there and out there. And then when I come to this side, I do the same thing. I came out of here, and I can see where I came out. So the next stitch I want to recreate is this. So I'm going to go in there and out there. Did it the opposite, I'd be making a different kind of stitch. If you do that and practice, it's fairly easy to remember. Now that you've Kitchenered across, you can see how the stitches kind of line up, and we'll see how well it came out. And what I'm going to do is remove all this waste yarn.